Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. Today's episode is all about feedback. Earlier this season, we delved deep into the importance of trust as the basis of every relationship in our lives. One of the 4 components of trust is openness. Now, within openness, it's this ability to give and receive feedback between you and the other person. And yet, we are really, as a society and a culture, really bad at feedback, asking for it, giving it, and receiving it. Why is that? I think we're really bad at feedback because we're inherently conflict avoidant, right? Nobody wants to actually have a feedback conversation, whether it's in your personal life with your loved one or at work in a professional setting. It's anxiety inducing. It triggers all of these thoughts about how am I going to be evaluated or seen? Is the other person going to receive this information well? And so today's episode is all about how do we ask for, give, and receive feedback in a way that allows everyone to move forward together. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 concepts. One is how to ask for it. And this starts with mindset plus behavior, as most of our work does. The second is, if you're the one giving feedback, what is your mindset? And the third, if you're receiving feedback, what do you think about questions and listening and following up and following through? Whether it's your personal life, like a relationship with your spouse, your partner, your best friend, a family member, that sometimes I find feedback with a family member pretty tough. Or you're talking to your boss, you're talking to a colleague or someone who works for you. This episode will inform how you think about feedback going forward. Let's all get really good at feedback together, because if we can, we all get stronger. I'm going to start off with a story that someone told me early on in my career. And it was, the mentor chooses you, you don't choose the mentor. So make yourself mentorable. And I thought a long time about this. Like, have you ever had someone say, oh, I would love for you to be my mentor? And you're like, what does that even mean? I want to mentor people who, first of all, want to be mentored, want feedback, and also I see something in them. I see potential. And so I want to start off with this idea of mentorability. And to be mentorable, you have to see feedback as a gift. Your toughest coach is often your best coach because they care enough about you to succeed. My entire company was based on a piece of feedback that when I was 23 years old, I had my first annual review, and my boss in the opening line said, Lisa comes across as young and overly enthusiastic at times. She should seek to have more gravitas. Now, I could have left that information to mystery. Like I could have said, oh, well, I don't understand what that means, or I don't think they're right, or who knows what that means. And I want to start off with, when we're asking for feedback, we need to have a mindset to leave nothing to mystery. If you are stumped, if you don't know, it is on you as the person receiving the feedback to ask for what to do about it. Got it. It's not going to crush me. And I think that is what we talk about in our superpowers language. Having the self-sustaining superpower means that you see your own value, that feedback is not going to crush you, that you know your worth and your value, and any feedback is intended to take you to the next level. So let's start off with, we can't be afraid of feedback, and we can't leave anything to mystery. I mean, I was raised by a tiger mom, so let's be clear, she was always giving me feedback. So I probably cut my teeth on feedback, or anyone who's ever been an athlete and has had a coach, you cut your teeth on feedback. And feedback has the potential to feel like dynamite and spiral us, or it can be a gift. We can see it as an opportunity to improve. So when we're asking for feedback, leave nothing to mystery. And I used to actually ask a question when I was a business analyst in consulting, because I found, like, if you ask someone, hey, can I have some feedback? It's like you're in a store and you're browsing. You're like, do you need some help? You're like, no, I'm just looking. I found when I asked people, can I have some feedback? They would often say, oh, you're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. And that doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't make you mentorable. Like, how can I get you to have fingerprints on my story? So I would often say, hey, what's one thing I could do better? Because everyone has one thing for you. And when you dimensionalize it to, hey, what's one thing you see that I could do better? When you ask the question that way, people can be specific with you. And everyone had one thing. Hey, you could write better headlines for your slides. Your emails tend to be very verbose. You could tighten those up. Everyone had one thing for me. And I had a notebook and I used to write one things down. And I would say, how do you do that? I want to learn from you. And every time I started to master that skill, I'd go back to that person and say, thank you. You know that one thing that you shared with me? I've done it. I hope you've noticed it. And they're like, oh yeah. I'll say, what's the next thing? I will also say, hey, what's one thing that I'm doing well that I should lean into? Because I often find it's really nice to know when people have acknowledged where you're doing well or where you've improved. I love the idea of most improved player. I've been saying this over and over again recently, that most improved player sometimes trumps most valuable player because we reward the growth. I will often say to myself, hey, this year, how have I gotten stronger in the last year? And when you reward the growth, you continue to seek out more feedback. I want to share a story about someone who wrote me. And this person said, you know what? I recently lost my job, but I got a new job and I've been in my new role for a couple of months. And recently there was a restructuring on my team. And I was the only person from my team moved to another work stream. And I'm wondering if I'm going to lose my job again, right? And I said to this person, well, have you asked? Like, no, I'm too scared. I'm not sure I want to know the answer. And this was on a Thursday afternoon. And I said, well, why don't you just go back to your boss and say, hey, I noticed that I've been moved to a new work stream. I really love working on this team and I love working with all of you. I would love some feedback. If this move was performance related, I'd like to know how I can improve so I can do even better. And the person said, really? I'm like, yes, you need to just reach out, leave nothing to mystery. Don't be afraid of the response because the worst case scenario is it is performance related. And wouldn't you rather know now so that you can actually address it and get help and mentored and be mentored to fix it? And so the person reached out on Microsoft Teams and said, hey, to this person, I'd love to know if this was performance related because if it is, I want to improve. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, we're going to throw up the visual, but I'm going to read to you a couple of lines verbatim because the person sent me a screenshot of the message that came from his boss and said, hey, no, it's not at all due to performance. It truly is just making sure all our tactics are covered in a way that makes sense and allows folks to be subject matter experts of tactic types. You are such an asset to the team and have so much experience that we feel comfortable moving you to different work streams and know you will succeed and pick up things relatively quickly. If anything, it means we have a lot of faith in your skills and abilities. So yeah, please don't take it as a negative. Being a jack of all trades and having years of experience is such an asset. What a relief this reply was. And the person wrote me back saying, this just saved my weekend. I would have spiraled out of control thinking that something was wrong and wasted all this energy this weekend. So don't be afraid of the feedback. Leave nothing to mystery. Ask for it. What's one thing I could do better? Or I find if someone says, hey, you're doing really well, just keep doing it. You can say, I would love to get one thing from you that will take me to the next level because in the next year or two, I'd love to be promoted. Is there a new way I could stretch myself? What am I doing well that I need to keep doing? When you engage in that dialogue, you make yourself mentorable. The second is, what if we're giving feedback? I also find sometimes it's hard to give good feedback, whether it's positive and or constructive. And I want to go back to, there was a former conductor of the Boston Philharmonic. And he actually had this philosophy that everyone gets an A. Everyone starts with an A. In fact, you were hired to be here because you've already made it through the screen. All you have to do is to keep your A. And my job as your coach is to continue to push you to keep that A. So I think when we're giving feedback, not from a place to sort of judge, to come down harshly on people, to be punitive, but we start from this position of, I see your strengths, I accept where you are, I want to take you to the next level. This feedback is coming from a really good place because my objective is to push you to your potential or push you to get promoted to the next level. Or in your personal life, I'm giving you this feedback because I want our relationship to be better. I want us to be stronger. I want us to not fight as much. I want us to be happy when we're together. And so let's start off with the mindset of when we give feedback, the intention is positive. I want to help this person succeed and improve. I want them to keep that A. They deserve that A. And again, if you are on our website, we're going to provide a downloadable PDF. I want to read you kind of some thoughts around feedback that is positive and then when it goes wrong. And I think it's really good to see this contrast because it will help frame up how we give feedback. So positive, really constructive feedback focuses on improvement, both what's in terms of what's possible or what's been achieved. The negative version of this is it creates defensiveness or it focuses on blame. I think when we play the blame game, feedback does not have the opportunity to create the intended outcome. Great feedback increases skill and confidence in someone's potential. So I really want to take you to the next level. This is why I'm giving you that feedback. Versus on the reverse side, undermines self-esteem, focuses on the person and not the skill set. I think when we focus on blaming the person and not, hey, this is where you are in terms of skill, this is where you need to be, it really creates the wrong dynamic. The third is it clarifies where I stand and what to do next. I think great feedback is all about, hey, there's no mystery in terms of where I stand with this person. They accept me, they're not judging me, and they're helping me. They're putting fingerprints on my journey. The reverse of that is it leaves the person guessing. And so one of the things I do when I'm giving feedback is I always say, hey, is this clear what to do with it? Because if it's not, we can go through it again, or why don't we role play it, or let me take a crack at showing you how I would make those changes, because I leave nothing to mystery. And the most important part of feedback is it leaves the person feeling helped. I think the reverse is the person feeling judged. I remember going through annual reviews and just beating myself up. Part of it was me, but I just felt hyper-evaluated. No one does their best work when they feel hyper-evaluated, like they're being watched. And so when we give feedback, it's important that we frame up our mindset to, I'm giving you this feedback because I want to help you. I want us to improve. I want to increase your skill set. And I want to make it clear where we stand and what you can do next. But underlying all of it is a belief in someone's potential. I believe that you can and will do better. And that underlies giving great feedback. Now here's the formula. And again, we're going to provide you a downloadable PDF that goes with the formula. But if you are giving feedback, I always think about 4 steps to it. The first is the concrete observation. And you want this to be concrete and fact-based. So here's what I observed. Here's exactly what I saw, or here's what I read in an email. The second component, here is the effect on me and others. So you want to explain why you're bringing this up and what happened as a result of that specific observation. The third, you pause and you listen for clarifying questions. And then the fourth is you work with that person on concrete suggestions, options, recognition, or encouragement. Think of this as like a ladder with these 4 stages. So I will give you an example, very simple, of one that my boyfriend used with me. So I have a tendency to make a mess in the bathroom. This is a very simple example, but I will hop out of the shower and kind of towel off on the bath mat and like there'll be water everywhere. And it just really bothers him. And there was this one morning where he said, hey babe, I want to talk to you about something. And he said, when you get out of the shower, there is water all over the floor. And there's so he's very concrete. I can observe that too. And I've been doing that for decades. So concrete observation. And he said, look, the impact on me is one, I don't want you to slip. I don't want to slip. I also am worried about bacteria in the bath mat. He's genuinely worried about that. And he's like, it just creates a whole mess for whoever comes behind you. Not always me, but any other person staying with you. It's just a hot mess in there. And I don't want it to be a hazard. I don't want it to be a safety hazard or any biohazard. And he said, does that make sense? Does that resonate with you? Is that something you've seen? And I was like, oh yeah, I do that. I'm sure it's annoying. And he said, hey, here are my concrete suggestions. And one of them is, he said, I am going to install a hook next to the shower head. And that's where your bath towel will hang so that you can grab your bath towel and use it and dry off in the bathtub shower area before you step out of the shower tub. And I said, oh, well, that's a good suggestion. I think one of the reasons why is the towel is hanging on the other side of the bathroom. Yes, a hook would be very helpful. And it was very funny. The next morning, there was no water on the ground as I exited the shower tub. And as I was getting my coffee, he encouraged me. He said, that was great. You did a good job. That helped everyone out. I thought the recognition encouragement was very helpful. But it was such a simple thing. But because he told me his observation, what effect it had on him and others. And then we actually problem solved the hook. And it was so funny. We had our super install the hook. And every time I look at the hook, I think of personal growth for me personally. Now, that's a very simple example. It can be actually in work even more helpful. I'm going to raise our chief of staff. We've been working on her email writing, which has gotten so much better. It's so well done. But she hadn't been classically trained on business emails. And what we would do is I would say, okay, why don't you send me a draft of that email? And we would sit down, whether in person or I would do it virtually, and say, hey, when you do this, it's nice to have bullets. And when it's so many words, the impact is it all gets lost. People don't really know where to gravitate or what do you want me to do from this email? And as a result of this feedback model, we can over time see that over the last year, the emails have gotten tighter. They're more direct. There's clearer call to action. Or if it's a more sensitive thing, because I do really respect that emails can be misinterpreted, what's the right way to open or close an email to express empathy or sensitivity around a difficult conversation? But we use this idea of concrete observation, the impact or effect on yourself or others, pause and listen for clarifying questions, and then ultimately concrete suggestions, options, and actions to take. This works every single time when you're doing feedback. Now, the third part is, what if you're receiving? What if you're on the receiving end of feedback? And I want to start with the mindset of receiving feedback. You have to believe and have trust, and this goes back to our first episode of the season around trust. You have to believe that the person giving you feedback has your best interests at heart. And so I will say, sometimes I get feedback from someone that I don't really know if their intentions are pure. So I do have to filter through that. I love feedback from customers, from my mentors, from my colleagues, from my boyfriend, from my mom. There are sources of feedback that really have a direct correlation to my success in life and the impact I have. So I do think there's a mindset around who's giving the feedback. How much do you trust them? How much do you have a relationship with them? And assuming we have the basis of a trust-based relationship, that we have a trust-based relationship together, I am really open to receiving feedback. And anyone who knows me, who's a good friend or a colleague or a work partner, I thrive on feedback. I love a feedback survey. And I first start off with, when someone is making an observation and telling you the impact on them, I listen without interrupting. I avoid arguing or defending. I try not to jump in. If I do, it's basically because of anger. I think when you're receiving feedback, there is an anger level, an amygdala hijack, a flight, fight, or freeze response. And I often have to tell myself, breathe, pause, receive. This person is well-intentioned. This is someone I care about. And giving feedback is already hard enough. I already know that person's taking in time and effort to give it to me. So I need to receive it. So I always say, avoid arguing or defending up front. Listen without interrupting. Probe for understanding. I think it is 100% okay, and you should ask questions. Okay, let me go back to that bath mat example. Does it really bother you? Is it something that's truly going to annoy you every day? Is this a pet peeve? What can I do about it? I also think when you're probing for understanding, it's okay to explain your point of view. So when I was doing the bath mat example, and the bathroom example, I did explain that my towel was on the other side of the bathroom, that it was actually really hard not to cross the bathroom without making the floor wet. And we talked about, do you want to just wipe it down with another towel? Other ways. We ultimately came up with our bath hook solution. And I think it's very important to acknowledge the person's point of view. Thank you for that feedback. I know how hard it was for you to tell me that. Consider whether and how the feedback applies, and workshop and collaborate and problem solve with the person on the path forward. This last step, I think, is very important to say thank you. I've considered your point of view. I know where you're coming from. I might disagree with it, in which case, let's find common ground. But if you're on the receiving end of feedback, if you start with empathy, self-awareness, and openness and acceptance and trust as a basis of it, all the rest falls into place. I can also point to all of the romantic relationships that broke down in my life, the ones that didn't work out. And it's because we stopped giving each other feedback. And if we were giving it to the other person or receiving it, we were defensive, we shut down. At some point, I know contempt entered the picture, but I just dug my heels in even further rather than being open to another way of doing something or another point of view. So feedback. Feedback is a gift. We all need to learn how to ask for it, give it, and receive it with trust, self-awareness, empathy, openness, and acceptance. I hope you loved this episode of In Confidence. It's one that's near and dear to my heart because I think through feedback, we all have the potential to get better. If you love this episode, I hope you'll share it with someone who needed to hear it today. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. And until next time, in the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.